Yeah, hi everyone. It's a beautiful day in the hood here in Brooklyn, and we're calling it the end of the year. I've always thought of the day after Labor Day as being the beginning of the year because it's sort of the rhythm of how the year would work for an analyst. Much busier, obviously, post Labor Day, and fun, because you've got Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's an easy time, weather's decent. Then we have the hard yards, which is, January through March Madness. Things begin to loosen up. And then for us, you'd have a huge voting season in May for the top analysts, the II survey, back when anyone cared about it. It doesn't matter anymore so much. But that would be May, which would obviously take you through to Memorial Day, and then summer is summer and obviously quieter. I think Nvidia's being a bit rude by reporting in the last week of, it's reporting tonight, which is awkward for people because this should be the vacation week of Wall Street, the last week in August. Okay, the other reason to think of it as the beginning of the year is actually Jackson Hole has become Jay Powell's favorite single time, the Fed offsite that they have there in Kansas-ish, at least within the Kansas Bank's remit. Jay Powell made a pretty big statement. He has done that every year now for 4 or 5 years, where Jackson Hole gives you a big statement. And the way people read the statement and the way I read it was it's all about maintaining the labor market now. So they're backing off being too aggressive on getting inflation down because essentially the economy's slowing and they want to keep the labor market good. So it's sort of dovish, although today the market's unhappy. We are near all-time highs. I think all of us on Wall Street are concerned that neither of the candidates, Trump or Kamala, are saying anything about that. Really, not saying anything about deficit spending or, the scale of U.S. debt, and that's a little bit of a concern to me and to the market. But in the meantime, it remains an inflationary environment and inflationary for markets, which should be good for oil. I think we would probably say maybe Trump is more inflationary, but it's not obvious either candidate is than the other. And with an economic slowdown, inflation is likely to be muted. Additionally, while inflation would be good for the oil sector, generally speaking, as you know, we've got significant oversupply of really everything: crude, US natural gas, arguably refining, we'll come back to that, chemicals definitely, and even copper. BHP reported this week and essentially gave a warning on the copper market, saying they couldn't see the ultimate tightening that everyone's playing for with the energy transition demand combining with lack of investment in new supply. They don't see that becoming a bull case for copper until the latter part of this decade. So that was a bit of a grim one. And, what are we left liking? Just briefly on refining. Refining, if you look at something like the XB-CL, which is XB is gasoline, CL is WTI. If you look at that spread, started August at $18 a barrel, respectable to say the least. It's just plummeted all the way down to $12 a barrel over the course of August, and it's looking weak. So that's a concern. And of course, you've got significant cuts to refining company earnings estimates, which are a function of Q3. And as I've told you several times, we used to say you make 1 in Q1, 2 in Q2, 3 in Q3, and 0 in Q4 in refining. So if Q3 is coming in rough, it's rough for the group. However much better quality they are in terms of management and strategy. And all these companies are better in terms of management and strategy. It's just the markets, the macro is not working out for them too well right now. And that's a bit of a disappointment, to say the least. Now, having said that, of course, AI, Torsten Slok just put out some of the capex of the Mag 7 companies, which has gone from like $10 billion a month 5 years ago to $45 billion a month now. And of course, a lot of that spending, incremental certainly, is AI, and that becomes a major theme that we think the market will continue to buy into. Of course, you've got to say all this with fingers crossed on the day that Nvidia reports, but the reality is the spending is very resilient, and whilst the Mag 7 stocks may be suffering, we can see a situation where the power, the utilities, which just was, just the most boring sector for 20 years, has suddenly become the most exciting sector in energy. And you know, we think that will continue. So we're talking about things like Vistra, we're talking about things like GE Vernova on the turbine side, Eaton on the picks and shovels. I keep saying this every week, but you know, it is what it is. It's hard to get excited about the big oils apart from a defensive standpoint. I was on Bloomberg actually this morning with my favorite, Tom Keene, and was saying that we're quite negative on Oxy here as well, by the way, because Warren, as he calls him, Warren Buffett, has stopped buying and Oxy, and that's going to be relatively negative for a company that he's driven to have a relatively high multiple. So that's some of the stuff that's out there as we end the year. It's an important time of year corporate news flow wise, because in oil, because you have a big conference at Pebble Beach going on right now with the senior managements all headed off there to meet major clients. I'm not invited. And next week, traditionally, the year starts with the Lehman conference, as it was, Lehman Energy Conference, which has now become the Barcap Energy Conference, which is the traditional start to the oil year as well. And at that one, you have a lot of CEOs and investors coming into New York. And so we'll be hosting drinks actually next week. And if you ping me privately, I can tell you where we'll be meeting at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. But on the corporate news flow side, you can see some sectors sort of moving around a bit. And maybe some stocks moving, and that's because essentially the managements are in discussions. One company that we were asked about specifically was BP, with the CEO at Pebble Beach. We were asked, you know, what we thought we should ask him, and I will say that, you know, much as I think that they should have brought in a new CEO, Murray Auchincloss actually does get good reviews from clients, and they're always positive about meeting him. So I think we prefer Shell because of Whale Salwan, you know, sort of having a better hand to start with, and also I think being somewhat more dynamic in terms of backing off the transition and focusing on the core of Shell. Shell is extremely cheap for the quality of its assets. BP doesn't have the same asset quality and is still more of a mixed bag of businesses, and so we prefer Shell here. Okay, listen, I'll leave it there for now, but have a great year, and I'll come back to you when the year actually starts next week. Cheers.